Have you ever walked into a Starbucks store and looked at the menu or the pounds of coffees on the shelves and wondered how it all started? Have you ever been curious about what went into getting Starbucks to where it is today? If you have been that curious cat, then this video is for you. So we all know Starbucks as the global coffee giant that has become synonymous with the drink itself in many regions around the world. A lot of us are die-hard fans of the coffee beans that allow us an exquisite experience of our daily caffeination, and the rest of us are more interested in the frappuccinos or the most current and creative drinks that become the new trend on the market. In whichever way we've decided to make Starbucks our chosen third place, it has since become an important part of many people's lives, and I wanted to dedicate this video to an elaboration of how it all became possible. Don't worry, this is not some history lesson that you will get bored of. It's the fascinating tale of how coffee was blended with romance to unleash a business that created the warmth of community as well as the flair of artistry behind espresso bars. You might have heard of the man by the name of Howard Schultz. He is usually incorrectly known to be the founder of Starbucks. Although Howard is the reason Starbucks has become the international coffee giant it is today, he was actually not part of the founding members of the company. The founders of Starbucks were three people: Jerry Baldwin, Zev Sagel, and Gordon Bowker. These three had met each other when they were students at the University of San Francisco. They connected with each other through shared interests and great coffee. Jerry Baldwin had been an English teacher, Zev Sagel taught history, and Gordon Bowker was a writer. But they were each inspired to sell high-quality coffee and learn the skill of roasting from a coffee roasting entrepreneur, Alfred Peet. Let's talk a little bit about Peet. He is known as the spiritual grandfather of Starbucks. Peet owned a coffee shop called Peet's Coffee and Tea in Berkeley, California. He is known to be the Dutch man who taught America how to drink coffee. This is because before Peet introduced dark roasted coffee in America, people were used to drinking bitter instant coffee that contained freeze-dried Robusta beans. Peet imported Arabica beans to the States and roasted them on his own to bring out the roasty, full-bodied flavor that fills your mouth. Our three Starbucks founders were impressed with Peet's high-quality coffee, and they wanted to give Americans who were turning away from prepackaged coffee a higher quality option. The three pooled their resources and decided to open a store in Seattle that would sell roasted whole bean coffee. So in April 1971, they opened their store doors to the public. The founders had debated over the name and decided to call it Starbucks, inspired by the old mining town Starbo in Washington. They also came up with a logo after going through old marine books and finding a two-tailed mermaid, also called a siren. This allowed a close association with the nautical-themed name Starbucks, which the founders had come up with. The siren is supposed to be representative of the seductive nature of coffee. Just like how sailors were enchanted by the voice of the siren, the smell of coffee is what draws customers to the doors of Starbucks stores. The success of the first Starbucks store had exceeded expectation, and in late 1972, with just a year over their first store opening anniversary, the founders opened a second store near the University of Washington campus. By the early 1980s, Starbucks had opened 4 stores in Seattle and had a loyal following of customers who loved the dark roasted coffee. This is when Howard Schultz comes into the picture. Schultz was then a general manager at a Swedish kitchenware company called Hammerplast. He was in the business of selling Swedish kitchen equipment and housewares. In 1981, Schultz got intrigued when the Starbucks coffee, tea, and spice store in Seattle started placing unusually large orders for a certain type of drip coffee maker. He went to Seattle from New York to investigate why this was happening. In Seattle, Schultz met with Jerry Baldwin and was given a tour of the store at the Pike Place Market. Schultz was fascinated with the values that were at the core of Starbucks and believed that the company held a lot of promise. After charming Baldwin and convincing the board that Starbucks' future lied in expansion, just a year later, in 1982, Schultz was hired at Starbucks as the Director of Retail Operations and Marketing. Now keep in mind that up until then, the pride and joy of Starbucks had been exclusively the high-quality dark roasted whole beans that were sold by the pound at the stores. What was missing was the social dynamic. The grinding and brewing of coffee happened at home. Think your local farmer's market or butcher's. You go and buy the produce in bags that you take home, but you don't enjoy the fresh apples and peaches right there while having enriching discussions about their origins. Schultz had recognized this weakness, and he figured out how to fix it when he went on a business trip to Milan in Italy. And then he saw the romance of espresso and flair of baristas behind steaming wands. He discovered lattes and cappuccinos and decided to bring the idea back to America and implement it at Starbucks stores. In his book, Pour Your Heart Into It, Schultz said, Starbucks had missed the point, completely missed it. This is so powerful. This is the link. What we had to do was unlock the romance and mystery of coffee, first-hand in coffee bars. The Italians understood the personal relationship that people could have to coffee, its social aspect. I couldn't believe that Starbucks was in the coffee business, yet was overlooking so central an element of it. Unfortunately, the founders of Starbucks were not in the favor of introducing Italian-style espresso bars at Starbucks. They thought that at its core, they were coffee roasters, and serving coffee by the cup at Starbucks would put them in the restaurant business, which was not what Starbucks was about. Schultz was adamant that it would work, so in 1985, he decided to leave Starbucks and start his own company, Il Giornale. The company was a success, which showed the commitment of Schultz and his team, who had tried hard to introduce Americans to the Italian way of enjoying coffee. In 1987, the founders of Starbucks wanted to sell the company, as they had decided to take other directions in their lives. This felt like a golden opportunity for Schultz, and he decided to buy Starbucks. Thus, Il Giornale acquired the assets of Starbucks, and the two companies became one under the name of Starbucks. Schultz, as the CEO, converted Starbucks from a local business with 6 stores and less than 100 employees to an international coffee chain with 5,500 coffee houses in over 50 countries. So, this is how the coffee house that we are all so familiar with came to be. Fascinating, isn't it? If you've enjoyed the content presented in this video and would like to know more, I would strongly suggest that you get your hands on Howard Schultz's book, Pour Your Heart Into It, which was published in 1997. It details the humble beginnings of Starbucks and how he brought it to where it is today. Thank you for watching. Until next time!